ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. అందరికీ వందనాలు. ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ವಣಕ್ಕಂ. Good morning to all. So, I welcome you all for the book launch of Thella Yenugu, which is Vella Yanai from Tamil to Telugu. So, I would like my publisher to speak few words about this book before we launch.
Good morning. Actually, publisher involvement into a great good. I am a publisher catches and got it. So, the point is that the personal chase Bhaskar and Kumar both are equally tried a lot to that. వాళ్ళ శక్తి కొద్ది దీన్ని వీరంత వరకు దాన్ని మూల పుస్తకానికి దగ్గరగా ఉండాలని తీసుకొచ్చారు. జనరల్గా ట్రాన్స్లేషన్ సరికి పదాలను కూర్చో లేకపోతే వాక్యాలు కూర్చో చాలా ఇబ్బందులు ఉంటాయి. ఇది కాకపోతే జనరల్ వచ్చే కామెంట్స్ అవేమీ లేకుండా తెల్ల ఏనుగు పుస్తకాన్ని సాధారణ 75% అంటే వాళ్ళు కాదు 90 అన్నారు అలాంటిది కాదు కానీ 75% దగ్గరలో దీన్ని మూలాన్ని దగ్గరగా ఉండాలని తీసుకొచ్చాం. దాని కృషికి మొత్తం వాళ్ళ కారణం అయితే ఇలాంటి అద్భుతమైన పుస్తకాలు రాయడానికి కారణం జయమోహన్. అది మీరు చదువుతుంటే మీరు కొన్ని చదువుతుంటే మీకు తెలుస్తుంది ఇంత అద్భుతమైన పుస్తకం అసలు కలవని నీళ్ళు వస్తాయి. అది ఒక నెల తరపున మిమ్మల్ని అదొకకుండా ఉంటుంది. సో ఎలా ఉంటుందో అనేది మా భాస్కర్ జయమోహన్ గారి కన్వర్సేషన్లోకి వెళ్ళాడు.
So let us unveil the cover and then start the conversation. I would welcome Jeymohan and Chaaya to unveil the cover. So both are Mohans, the publisher and the writer. The book will be available at the starting of the stage. So you can take the book and after the session, Jeymohan sir will sign the book. Okay, since the audience are mixed, I will make the conversation everything in English. First, what is the inspiration to write such a great record of the history in a fiction format?
I am very happy to be here because this is my third book published in Telugu. The first one is Nila, translated by Bhaskar. The second one is Anavarana, translated by Kumar. And this is the third book. The book is going to be published in English on next month by HarperCollins in India and FSG in the USA. So I am happy to see the book in another language first. So I thank you. And I am very lucky because Bhaskar is taking too much interest in translating my work into Telugu. And Anil is doing a tremendous job to translate my work into Telugu. And I heard that the translations, the language and diction of the translation is really excellent. And somebody told me that through translating Nila into Telugu, Bhaskar created a new language, new style in Telugu. It's a great thing. It's a proud moment for any writer. I thank you. I for my thanks everybody here, the publisher, the translators, and a lot of people wrote a lot of good reviews about my books in Telugu. So I am here. I have to say thanks for everybody. The question about this question. Actually, I wrote a book about Gandhi in 2010, I think. It's a question answer session. I published in my website. Then I combined it as a book. While writing that book, I was researching about the great famines that shook India at that time. The first famine at 1717 something, and the second famine at 1870s. Because these famines created the real national movement. This famine influenced Mahatma Gandhi very much. And another person who influenced me in this subject is, I have to refer his name. His name is Roy Max. He wrote a very interesting book, The Great Hedge of India. And his second book is The Great Theft of India. He is the person who gave the great insight about the famines of their time. And he argues that famines are man-made, not natural laws. That famines devastated India, the eastern side of India. At the same time, the western side of India had a record harvest in their period. So they looted the grains from the western side and let the people die in the eastern side. So through that book, I got a lot of insights, and I wrote a lot about that book. And he became my close friend. Even today, he is my close friend. From that insight, I actually planned to write a non-fiction about the famines, particularly the famine in Tamil. There's a very interesting thing that the British labeled the famines as three distinct famines. You go to Wikipedia, you can see Deccan famine, and you can see Bengal famine, but it is actually single famine from Assam to Tamil Nadu. But they are actually distinguishing these famines into three different famines. The way they are actually hiding the numbers of the deaths of the famine. So I plan to write a book on it in the Tamil famine. And at the same time, I had a impression that the famine time, absolutely there were no rescue operations done by Hindu mutts and religious organizations. They ignored the people. We have great mutts in Tamil Nadu, Kanji Mutt, and Thiruvalluvar Mutt, and all that. A lot of mutts, a lot of religious institutions, a lot of Mandadhipatis and kings are there. They just ignore the fact that the people are paying. So the caste system hide the fact that people are dying before our eyes. So famine is important. More important is the caste system, which made this great Holocaust. That's why I plan to write it as a fiction, to combine the caste system and the family. So it starts from a scene which I had like a dream. A worker is dying in the street, and another worker is standing there to rescue him, but he could not touch him because that the dying person is untouchable. So that's the major reason. The nearly 25,000 people died on every day for more than 2 years in Chennai. That's a British record. Among them, more than 70 to 70% people are Dalits. That's why the death is ignored. We have absolutely no record in any of our classic texts about that famine. Absolutely no records about the two major famines in our classic texts. No poets wrote any book on the famine. We have only folk tradition, folk records about the famine. Because the people died on the famine is Dalits. So the major issue of this book is famine, not the virtual famine, but the spiritual famine. That's why I wrote it as
It gives a background and stage for the book. So this book talks about Chennai, in those days, Madras, how the Madras was taken over by the British, and what was the sufferings of the workers, the indigenous people's suffering was talked in detail in that book. And the first summit, the summit is like where the workers call for a strike. That in India, that was the first strike called by the worker that was recorded in this book. So he has that proof for that. No other, as sir said, no historic properly recorded that one, but this book recorded that. And also this starts from the story actually starts from the person who comes to India as a employee of British, who is not a British. I identify everybody as whoever came and ruled us are British. So they are just British employees. They are not British born people. He is an Irishman. So even they were also oppressed or suppressed for many centuries like us, before us, by Britishers. So they become employee of them, and they come here. They work for British, and we suffered under them. That was very well captured. So particularly in this book, I just want to give you a brief. The story happens in and around of Chennai, the Madras in those days, where a lot of Telugu references are also there. Most Chennai was part of, it was owned by both Telugus and Tamils, right? So the poverty has contribution to Chennai city's development, and also the atrocities, and both development as well as atrocities, both are taught in detail in this book. So, okay, sir, in this novel, this also talks about interesting phenomenon or theory. This says in the book, in one place, the Irish man, where he talks about a Christ, Jesus Christ. We all believe that we see Jesus Christ white pink portraits, right? Photographs or statues. But whereas he says that Christ was not a white, he is a black. So that is also so convincing, and I would like to hear what is the evidence we have to say that Christ was a black, not a.
So it is very obvious, it's a historical fact that Christ was a black man, not a white person. He born and brought up in Aramia, which is the part of old Ethiopia, and he has very strong connections with Ethiopian folk. And even the Jews of Aramic area is now they consider as grown people are black people. So the early depictions of Christ is as a black person. In many, you can see the early depictions of Christ as a black man in Austrian museum, in French museums. Even recently, previous month, I was there in Vienna. I saw 2 or 3 early paintings depicting Christ as a black person with the curly hair, flat nose, and big eyes. So the white picture, the Christ as a white man, is actually depicted by Constantine, the Roman emperor. He actually, there is a gossip that the picture of Christ is not actually Christ, it is Constantine. Constantine asked the painters to paint his own picture as Christ. So later it was adopted as the whole face of Christ. So that's the historical fact, that's not an imagination.
And there is a mention in the novel that changing. Now we talk about changing the religion is possible, but caste is not possible, right? But what Jeymohan sir says in this book is like once upon a time there where before British recorded our caste system, one had an option to choose or change their caste. So that doesn't mean that before independence, before the British,
Yeah, caste system is not a static system. According to historical documents, people can change their caste if they can change their profession. That's not very easy, but it was happening in India. At least 2 or 3 solid evidences are there that people changed their caste through migrating another area and changing their jobs. See, you may have heard about Veeragodi Vellala. It's a very prominent upper caste Vellala community in Tamil Nadu. They are actually Marava community, they are warriors. They migrated to Ramnad, they started cultivating land, and slowly they become Vellalas. It's like Kotapulema. They are also considered Maravas, they converted into Vellalas. So everyone who can capture some land and start cultivation will consider as a Vellala in due course. That was a very common, because there was no There was no proper records at that time. No, who they have to say that you are not that community. So there was a revolt at the period of 1870s when Colt was the governor of Madras. There is a clash between Marathakottai Chettiars and Komiti Chettiars. And Court ordered that nobody has no right to change their caste identity and their caste systems. Everybody should obey their caste system strictly. You should not change your caste order and systems. That's the first order that made caste as a static thing. He actually stopped the fluidity of the caste system by a single order. That order is actually copied by other governments throughout the British Raj. And after that, you cannot change your caste. And your caste is actually regarded by British people. And you can check what is this caste, what is the status of the caste. So once it is recorded, this cannot be changed. So that's what I am referring this in this book. These are historical facts. You can check it.
Sir, in this book, Kartharayan, who is a Dalit in this book, he talks about Dalits having their own Shastras, and they had scholars. They had continued the lineage of teaching to the next generations, and they had their Puranas, Itihasas. They were learning part of their livelihood. So, where the cut has happened now, Dalits didn't have, they don't perform pujas nowadays.
The thing is, if a community lost its rights on land, within centuries, it will become a Dalit community. That's the practical scenario in Tamil Nadu at least. See, there is a very popular inscription, belongs to Pallava age, 7th century. It shows that Parayas has to perform the puja performances in Hindu temples. Particularly the community called Valluva. Valluva is a subset in Parvata. They have to perform the Hindu puja karmas in the Hindu temple. Then after the Chola Empire starts, the Parayas become outcasts and the rights are deprived and Brahmins are appointed for Hindu pujas. So the entire scenario changed. Within 300 years, Parayas become Dalit communities now. Okay. And the fact is, I'm not talking anything out of history. These are facts, recorded facts. You can see inscriptions and other details. Every community has their own intellectual tradition. So, considering a particular community has intellectual tradition, and another community has no intellectual tradition is a wrong thing, which is taught by Brahmins and adopted by the Westerners. That's not the truth. For example, these Padinam Kirkanaka books, all the Jain and Buddhist texts are learned and preserved by Paraya community. Do you know who gave the manuscript of Tirukural to the Westerner to publish? Father of Ayodhya Pandita. He's a Dalit. His father Kandappa Pandita, he owned a copy of Tirukural. That's the only complete Tirukural version. He gave it to Ellis and Ellis published it. Remember one thing, the entire manuscript of Tirukural, except one, all are available, are obtained from Dalit communities. So Tirukural is entirely a Dalit community book. It's a book belonged to Dalit. They had their own intellectual tradition. That's what Kartharayan says in this novel. We have our own intellectual tradition. We have our own myths, our own Puranas, and our own traditions. So that's a fact. So in this novel, you can see a juxtaposition between two things. One is the famine, how people are dying in the famines. And another thing is the apathy or the the ignorance of the ruling caste and the ruling class. Continuously, I'm showing two words in this novel. One is the famine word. The next one is the British rule. The British, the fort, St. George Fort. The St. George Fort actually doesn't have any idea about that famine under their nose. This is not happening even today in our bureaucracy. I work in government. I know how the government is works. Their officer naturally won't care anything above his jurisdiction area. So you have to report a thing to an officer. It is inevitable to report. Otherwise, I won't report anything to my officer. So a senior officer today in government will never understand anything in the grassroots level. That's the ruling system, ruling methodology developed by British, and they created it in India, and still we are adopting it. So the famine is actually created by the British, but the British actually don't know about it. At the same time, the British has two phases. One is the exploitation phase. They created the famine. They let us die in millions. See, the two famines of India is the biggest ever happened famine upon the earth. Now you can see nearly 70 million people died in the second famine. The biggest, it's like the total population of France died in a famine. Imagine that. That's the scenario of their famine. But there's another phase for the British. They gave us the humanist idea of humanism, the idea of liberalism, the idea of democracy, and the idea of justice. They gave to us. So they have the two phases. One is the phase of exploitation, and the another phase is the phase of intellectualism and idealism. So I try to narrate the two phases, not as a single voice is there. It's a it has multi voices. It has a complicated picture on the English.
Ask next question to Anil. Kumar, yes, Chaaya has been working with a lot of English classics or foreign classics, but you wanted to be associated with Jeymohan despite you are very little knowledge on Tamil. You still want to be working on Jeymohan. What was your reason and what was your motivation to work on this?
నేను ట్రాన్స్లేషన్ అంటే 70% రీడింగ్ 30% recreation in other language అనుకుంటాను. I think it's a seriously creative process. I believe reading also is a creative process. సో జయమోహన్ గారిని ఒకసారి చదవకుండా 7-8 సార్లు ఒకే పుస్తకం చదువుకోవడానికి ఆయన ట్రాన్స్లేషన్ నాకు హెల్ప్ చేస్తుంది. నేను అందుకని జయమోహన్ గారు చేస్తాను. రెండోది ఈక్వల్లీ తమిళ్ నుంచి నాకు చేసే తమిళ్ ద్వారా తమిళ్ వాడి ఇంగ్లీష్ వాడి చేస్తున్నప్పుడు అవినాష్ భాస్కర్తో కూర్చొని గంటలు మాట్లాడి చేసే టైం ఉంటుంది. అది కూడా చాలా గొప్ప లిటరీ ఎక్స్పీరియన్స్. ఎందుకంటే అవినాష్ భాస్కర్ జయమోహన్ గారు రాసిన దాదాపు ప్రతి వాక్యం చదివాడు. సో దాంట్లో ఉండే అర్థార్థాలు కానీ న్యూయాన్సెస్ కానీ చాలా గొప్పగా చెప్తాడు. దురదృష్టం ఏంటంటే భాస్కర్ ఎక్కువ మాట్లాడు, నేనే ఎక్కువ మాట్లాడితే భాస్కర్. అదే రెండోది జయమోహన్ గారి విషయానికి వస్తే చాలా మంది రచయితలు రకరకాలుగా ఉంటారు. నేను చదివిన కొద్దిపాటి రచయితల్లో కొంతమంది చాలా డైరెక్ట్ గా రాస్తారు, ఉన్నదంతా స్లోగన్స్ చెప్పి, అది నాకు ఇష్టం ఉండదు. కొంతమంది చాలా సెటిల్ గా మెటాఫర్స్ తో రాస్తారు, అది నెక్స్ట్ లెవెల్. జయమోహన్ గారితో ఏంటంటే పుస్తకం చదివేసిన తర్వాత మనకి ఏమవుతుంది అనేది నా రీడింగ్ ఎక్స్పీరియన్స్. పుస్తకం మూసేసిన తర్వాత జయమోహన్ గారితో స్టార్ట్ అవుతుంది నా డైలాగ్. అంటే సబ్ కాన్షియస్ గా జరుగుతుంది అది. దానికోసం నేను జయమోహన్ గారు చేస్తాను. జయమోహన్ గారు పుస్తకంలో ఏం రాస్తారు అనేకంటే పుస్తకం ఏం రాయలేదు దాంట్లో అనేది నాకు చాలా ఇంపార్టెంట్. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్ నాకు మహాత్మా గాంధీ అంటే నాకు చాలా ఇష్టం, మోహన్ దాస్ గారు. ఈ పుస్తకం మూసేయగానే నాకు ఫస్ట్ ఏడెన్ కాతారాను చాలా గొప్ప క్యారెక్టర్స్, జోసెఫ్ అని కూడా ఉంటాడు, వాడు చాలా ఇంట్రెస్ట్. నాకు ఫస్ట్ మహాత్మా గాంధీ గుర్తొచ్చాడు. నా ఉద్దేశంలో ఈ రోజు మనకున్న పరిస్థితుల్లో మహాత్మా గాంధీ మనం మహాత్మా అంటే మానేసి మానేసిన రోజుల్లో ఈ పుస్తకం కంట్రిబ్యూషన్ మనకు మహాత్మా గాంధీ గుర్తు చేయడం, ఆయన ఎందుకు మహాత్మా అనేది ఈ పుస్తకం కంట్రిబ్యూషన్ అని నేను అనుకుంటాను. అంటే అంత ఫ్రాక్చర్డ్ సొసైటీలో, అంత కాస్టిజం ఉన్న దీంట్లో బ్రిటిష్ వాళ్ళు మన కాస్ట్ సిస్టమ్ ఎక్స్ప్లైట్ చేసుకుంటున్నప్పుడు మహాత్మా గాంధీ ఇంతమందిని కూడగట్టి, ఇప్పుడు ఆయన అన్నారు మఠాలు పట్టించుకోలేదు, నిన్న నేను ఆయన అడిగాను తర్వాత ఏమైంది. ఎప్పుడైతే గాంధీ గారు లీడర్షిప్ చేపట్టారో ఆ హిందూ మఠాలు అవి కూడా వచ్చి అందరూ కలిసి యునైట్ అయ్యి ఫ్రీడమ్ తెచ్చుకున్నారు. సో అది నా ఉద్దేశంగా అది భారతదేశం ఒక్కచోట జరిగిందని నేను అనుకుంటాను. రైట్, ఆయన పుస్తకాలు నేను అందుకు చదువుతాను. ఎక్కువ చదవడం నాకు చాలా ఇష్టం ఆయన పుస్తకాలు. ఆ చదవడానికి నాకు ఎక్కువ వెసులుబాటు ఎప్పుడు కనిపిస్తుంది అంటే ఆయన పుస్తకాలు ట్రాన్స్లేట్ చేసినప్పుడు. ఇంకొక చిన్న విషయం అదేంటంటే హిస్టారికల్ ఫిక్షన్ అంటారు కదా, హిస్టారికల్ ఫిక్షన్ నేను వేరే వాడు చదివాను. ఈ పుస్తకానికి వస్తే ఈ పుస్తకం ప్రత్యేకత ఏంటంటే వన్ సెంటెన్స్ ఫిక్షన్. సో ఈ పుస్తకం హిస్టారికల్ ఫిక్షన్ ఎప్పుడు గొప్పదవుతుందంటే పాత 100 ఏళ్ల క్రితం చదివిన పుస్తకం చదువుతుంటే ఈ రోజు పరిస్థితులు గుర్తుకు రావాలి. నాకు ఈ పుస్తకంలో ఈ రోజు మన గవర్నమెంట్ ఎట్టా ఫంక్షన్ చేస్తుంది, ఈ రోజులో మన డిఫరెన్సెస్ పొలిటికల్ సిస్టమ్స్ పొలిటికల్ పార్టీస్ ఎట్లా ఎక్స్ప్లైట్ చేసుకుంటున్నాయి, ఆ రోజుల్లో ఎట్లా ఎక్స్ప్లైట్ చేసుకున్నారు అనేది నాకు గుర్తొచ్చింది. సో థ్యాంక్స్ ఫర్ రైటింగ్స్.